Okay, so let's talk about it. Purpose. I really think that you should start, Mitch, because it's like we've kind of mentioned this before, but when we first met you, you pretty much just like right away started like it was like you were looking for a purpose.
Hmm.
That's what it looked like to me. It's like you were looking for it, and you just wanted to get all your doubts and objections out of the way that we had the best purpose. You know what I mean? Like, does it really make sense? Like, are all the T's crossed and so forth, right? So maybe you can maybe start off by just what do you see as your purpose and why, and then maybe we can go around and discuss that and see where that goes.
Yeah, cool. My purpose is to get every single child and adult on the planet, all their basic needs met, and the best version of that. And basic needs including obviously food, water, shelter, clothing, things like that, but also education, meaning the best education. And by education, I don't mean school and textbooks and boring shit. I mean, right now, you listening to this podcast is education. Being part of the self-perfected group is education. Doing the Destiny I process or using TechnoTutor, that's education. And how TechnoTutor fits into this. So what does my purpose look like on a daily basis is creating content like this, talking with people like you guys, and building this network, and then selling TechnoTutor, distributing it. Because how is someone supposed to comprehend purpose and doing what's best for all and what that actually takes if they can't even read above a second or third grade level, or they can't even process information to actually put the pieces together and realize that the world is so fucked right now and it's only going to get more fucked. Like, it's not going to get better in 2021 unless you step up and you actually integrate what we're talking about here. So that's what I see as my purpose. And Cameron, you have some good talks on YouTube, and we made that one video together called the Big Picture. Mm-hmm. And we basically talk about the three things that's needed, which is perfecting the education system and not saving the education system, not trying to save schools, rather just showing people what real education looks like in the home, self-directed, all that. And then 2 is changing the money system. And 3 is changing politics and the other laws necessary to ensure that these needs are met. And so that's what I see as my purpose. And it's the biggest purpose that I can fathom. And when we get there, we'll see further. But it just makes complete sense to me. And when I got into it, I was looking at stuff like this for a while. I had heard about stuff like, automation and AI and things in the world changing. And I was looking into like Peter Diamandis and Elon Musk and those guys and seeing how are they like there's a book called Abundance by Peter Diamandis and Bold. And they talk about entrepreneurship and how you can use entrepreneurial thinking to change the world and all that. And they broke it down into like these 11 different categories that need to change and how to use technology to change the world, including education, food, water, sanitation, politics, communication systems, things like that. I was like, damn, that was really cool. And it was literally right before I went to the Gin event and I met you guys that I had written all 11 of them down in my journal. I was like, I want to do all these, not just one, because I realized it's all interconnected. So like, I got to fucking make this happen. And then I show up and then I meet Kien and then he introduced me to Asif and all you guys. So it's like, oh, this is pretty cool. So that's my purpose. Asif, what about you? Got you mid-bite.
No, I'll go instead.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to hear Asif for this.
Catching Asif when he's not eating food may be the greatest purpose you could set for yourself.
Have you guys heard of ASMR?
Yes.
No. Oh, is that the thing where you eat?
This is the part where you...
I don't think your mic is working because
wait.
What I'm seeing looks like it should sound way different than
wait. Okay. Is this working?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Nobody wants this.
yeah, people make so much money with this stuff. That's my purpose. You know what? Fuck this. I'm off this pod. I'm going to go shoot a ASMR video. See you guys later.
Right, yeah. Drake, your turn.
No, I was just thinking while you were talking, Mitchell, about, what would be the best thing? Because I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and this person was Muslim, and we were talking about religions. I was over their home and they were asking me, you know, if I'm religious or not. And I just,
You're like, well, I just did a podcast on Friday.
Yeah,
Did you send them episode 18?
exactly. I was like, well, perfect timing. It's funny how that works, right? But yeah, we got into this conversation where I was just saying, well, look, you know, because they were saying, I don't like in Christianity how people just will believe like, oh, if I just believe that Jesus is the Son of God, then I'm saved, and then they don't do anything. And I'm like, yeah. So obviously you've got to change. You've got to change, right? And he's like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm like, okay, so you know, what could be the best thing that you would do that would prove that you've changed? And the conversation we had was changing the money system, right? But as soon as I introduced this thing, he goes, yeah, but America is a capitalistic society. We're not a welfare state, you know, and you know, that's never going to happen. I'm like, there you go, right there. You don't want to change. You're not willing to do it, right? And I was thinking, okay, if I align myself, right, if I'm totally aligned with changing the money system, and that seems virtually impossible to most people, well, that's cool, because there's a lot of people, and I was thinking about Martin Luther King Jr., right, where he went into college as a 15-year-old thinking, I want to do something about this whole segregation thing, which seemed impossible to a lot of people back then, right? And he just applied himself for years and years and years. Before you ever heard of him, he was applying himself as far as figuring out what would be the best way to go about doing this could possibly be. And then he actually physically applied himself in the real, like, outer world where everybody could see him. And it was like, you're being attacked, you have to do something, you stand up, right? And then I was also thinking about how comparatively that's easy to what we're suggesting with changing the money system. And the reason I say that is because within segregation or like racism, things like that, it's like, we talked about this on a previous podcast as well, how it wasn't necessarily the race or the color of the person's skin. It was the class that they were separating, right? They're separating the slave class, the worker class, from the elite class, from everyone else, right? And that still exists today. Nothing has fundamentally changed. If you look at, you know, India, where they've got the, I think it's called the Brahmin, no, maybe it's not called that, but basically they have a class that they call the untouchables, right? Where literally, if they touch you, you're unclean, and you're like, no, I can't even be touching you or touching something that's touched you or anything like that. And they're all the same color. They're all the same people.
That's like all of us now with coronavirus.
Yeah, right. Check that out. Yeah. And so it's interesting to see, like, it's not so hard to get people of different races to go, oh yeah, we're all the same. The harder part, or the more difficult part, the more challenging thing, and the thing that's really going to make a real impact, is changing the money system so that everyone is taken care of and there are no more slaves. And that is way more worth any time or any energy or any effort that I could expend than anything else. Because otherwise, you know, when you have the money talk with anybody, it's inevitable that it gets brought up that we value money more than human life. Everyone can see it. We don't say it out loud. It's not, you know, but it's underlying every single thing. It's so obvious. And yet we're the ones who created money. So, you know, if we all die, the animals don't care about money. The plants don't care about money. We are the only ones who care, us as humanity, right? And so we are the only ones who can do something about it. We're the only ones who can change it. So to say that it's like this thing that's, no, it's just this whole system, you can't change it, it's bullshit. It's just everyone doesn't want to. Everyone's feeling too small to take on those tasks. And so just imagine then if everyone who we look up to in our history of like, you know, Martin Luther King Jr. or Gandhi or people like that, if they all felt too small, or Nelson Mandela, right? They all felt too small and like, oh, it's just too big. What kind of a world we'd live in, like an even worse world than we live in right now. There, like you wouldn't even have hope, which is bullshit anyway, right? But it's necessary. This is not something that is like a fantasy or something that would be nice to happen. It's absolutely necessary if we as beings are going to transcend meaninglessness. Because right now, what are you doing with your life? If you're just going to work, if you're just living like just for the moment, just trying to survive, you're not living. You're not doing anything of any purpose. It's completely meaningless life. And the only way that you're going to get to transcending that or getting into like heaven is to become that person who's, let's say, worthy of heaven or basically equal to heaven. And having that selfish point of view of like, well, it's just too big. I can't do anything about it. And therefore there's no point in me actually changing. You just proved right there, you're not equal to it. You're not worthy of it. So
Drake, what was that line you took note of that Cameron said on the self-leaders call?
yeah, it was what I'm equal, or I attract what I am equal to. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you think about what is it that we're all doing as individuals on a regular basis, is just like entertaining yourself in some form, you know, like totally wasting what we have been given by being here, you know. And so what's interesting about religion is that it gives you that sort of get out of jail free card. It's like, well, I can waste my life just entertaining myself, basically, as long as part of that entertainment is saying I believe in this and promoting it in some
Like
way.
that's your purpose.
Yeah, like then it'll all work out in the end.
Mhm.
And like imagine that this is reality. People think that reality is what happens after this, but that's very ignorant, and that's very selfish and self-interested, and also very fearful. You know what I mean? I don't know what happens when I die, so that's got to be what's real, not this. This doesn't matter. And it's like, what if this literally is your only shot of experiencing reality and being a part of it? You know?
Or-
and what?
Or what if this is seeing how you behave here? Like imagine this is, you guys ever play for like a soccer team, or you try out for a team in high school
Mhm.
and you go to the tryouts, right?
Mhm.
And then based on how you perform in the tryouts, they get to determine whether you join the team or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, what if this is the tryout of like, okay, whatever.
This is the tryouts for team life.
Right. You got the hat. For those of you who are just listening, you got the
Everyone
hat.
gets picked last, by the way.
What does that mean?
You ever get picked last for the team?
No one picked first.
You know?
Right.
And the point is like, say there is an afterlife that's way more important than this one. And what would be the point of this one, logically speaking? All right, I'm listening back to Cameron. If you go to Cameron's YouTube channels, he has his old Facebook Live. You could probably find him in the playlist that's called Discussions About Reality. Or
There's a
something like
link
that.
always in the YouTube video. There's always a link to Cameron's YouTube page.
Cool, good. And he makes a lot of really, really powerful points. This was when Max was either just born or before he was born. So he was now Cameron's a softie. So now Cameron's soft. I'm kidding.
I'm always hard, actually.
Yeah.
Oh God.
That never changes. Yeah. Right. The point that you make is if you're not going to follow the rules of this reality, like you're going to come into this reality, then delude yourself to the point where it's like, oh, it's about something else other than this reality. Why the fuck would you get let into after you die, say, anything else, any other reality, any other sea of consciousness, any other, heaven or whatever, if you're not willing to because what he was saying is you're just going to get to that quote unquote reality and then make up some bullshit of like, oh, this isn't reality. Like, this is not how it's supposed to be, because it requires something of you. It requires your participation or as part of the whole. Like if you were really to seep into a sea of consciousness or whatever, why would you be allowed in if you're just going to fuck around and do what's best for yourself and nobody else? Like, I wouldn't want you part of my sea of consciousness or whatever the fuck. And so what this really boils down to, the application of it is exactly what Drake and Mitchell are saying, which is my purpose too. It's change the system so that it doesn't matter where you're born in this world, you can actually live a life of dignity. You can actually participate in a way that you're Max, 4 years old. It was the first kid that I personally, understood a child saying, I don't want to die.
Hold on, that was at 3 years old.
Yeah. What did I say?
4.
4. Yeah, at 3. I just remember, I was reflecting back to, I shared my blog with a couple of people because I needed some perspective. I was like, hey, try this one. But the first blog that I wrote publicly, it was called The Grand Entrance, right? And in that, I went through, I remember the thought I had when I was writing it, and it was about wanting everything to be perfect. And when I make my first blog, I wanted it to be like super extravagant, right? But I was like, let go of that bullshit. And that's what I wrote about. I was like, forgiving myself for wanting to make a grand entrance, just write. And it became this super long writing about when I was a child, wanting to kill myself because my parents treated me so poorly, that maybe if I killed myself, I would be able to see the funeral and my parents will feel guilty for how they treated me. And I was sharing that with people, and so many people have felt that way. No, and my parents weren't even bad. Like comparatively, yeah, my parents beat me and stuff, but my mom did the best she could to try to show us love all the time. Like I've had so much support from my parents throughout my entire life. They taught me so much, right? In terms of what would be best, that's what I'm comparing it to, right? So they weren't like, and when I say bad, I don't mean they were worse than other people, right? It's like we're all fucking evil, right? And they were just expressing that in a particular way. But the point is, hearing Max process that point of, I don't want to die. I like reality. I like the world that I live in. It was like, oh shit, I didn't even think that was a thing. Like, dude, like, wow, and realizing that that's the first kid that I know has consciously, not just consciously thought that, but that ran through them of, oh no, I'm going to die one day and that will suck. Not because, particularly I'm afraid of what's going to happen. I don't know. It's more so from the perspective, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like, but I like it here kind of thing. Right. And so realizing that not everybody has access to that. In fact, almost nobody has access to that. And even comparative of that, it's like the shit that the low quality of life that we have access to, 99.9% of people don't even have access to that. That's fucked. So the application of the concept that I'm going to bring up is changing the system. And the reality of it in terms of the concept is, what is the only way? If we look at all the outcomes of what could happen when you die, what are some of the outcomes that people say?
You go to heaven.
Possibilities.
All
Heaven,
your
you go to
dreams come
hell.
true. Yeah, you burn. Forever.
Burn forever.
Nothing happens. You go to complete darkness.
Yeah, it's just gone. You don't exist.
You're reincarnated and
Reincarnated. Okay, perfect. Whether you're reincarnated, whether you go to heaven, whether you go to hell, or you go to some other kind of dimension reality, or what was that other one?
Darkness, like nothingness.
Yeah, you don't exist anymore, or you go into the sea of consciousness, blah, blah, blah. You go back to the earth. If you prepare yourself for the worst case scenario, or prepare yourself most broadly, it would be, okay, no matter where I find myself, I'll do the absolute best. And so the process, all it is, if I could simplify it the most based off, everything that I've compiled and everything that we've all heard, it's like, right now, in this moment, whether you are listening to this and you're in a super tight situation where, you know, you have a family of fucking 12 and you have to be like a parent, even though you're not a parent, you have to do that for your brothers and sisters, or you live with your parents, you have total flexibility, you have no financial stress, no matter where you are in this moment, are you doing everything you can to be the absolute best? And by be the absolute best, I don't mean like triumph over everybody. I mean, are you making sure that all relationships that are in your life are the best? And the expression of that would, on the greatest scale, would be changing this world. And so in terms of, is that going to happen right now? No. That's why it's a process of self-perfection, because we have to undo all of the ways in which we got wired and programmed to not do what's best, which was every single thing basically that we got wired and programmed for. So go ahead, Jake.
You know what you just reminded me of? I remember, because you were saying like, it doesn't matter if, you know, you're one of 12 and you've got to take care of your family, or if you're living at home, you have the flexibility. And I was thinking, you know, it kind of brought me to how easy it is to live at home, right? Or how easy it is to not change or not do what you can do to challenge yourself. And it reminded me of when I was in university, or like that summer going into university, my friends went off to Europe, and when they came back, they were telling me stories of their travels. And I was like, man, you guys went to Europe. How was it? It sounds great, right? And they were telling me that at a certain point, they had run out of money. They'd completely run out of money, where they were like stealing granola bars, just so they could have enough to eat for the night. And then just like running around, sleeping like in train stations and shit like that. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, I want to do that. That was actually like glamorous to me, because they had gone out and they had taken the risk, and it was like, it didn't work out, but fuck it. Like they actually did something. And here
Like
I was,
Survivor Man, urban Survivor Man.
yeah, kind of. Yeah. And I'm like, but they're actually having an adventure, where I'm here sitting at home, you know, just doing my normal routine. And, you know, eventually I did go and do exactly that. But it's so interesting to compare that to, okay, now you have to build a business, right? Or you have to change the money system. You have to actually make a real impact in this world, in reality. How easy it is to just shift and just go, well, no, that's scary. That's too much. That's too bad. You know, like that's an adventure. But, you know, most people are sitting at home going, yeah, I don't want to lose it all. You know, and you're not, it's like I was saying before, that's not living. You're not experiencing life at all. And isn't it interesting how when you hear it from someone who's like super mega successful or mega wealthy already, then it can kind of become glamorous again. Then it's like, wow, they did all that. Yeah. Like they pushed through all of that stuff. But it's like when we focus the attention in on ourselves, then, or when it's focused on something that nobody else is even considering, as far as like actually changing the money system, what that actually takes, and then pushing to go do that. Most people are like, they'll say like these nice platitudes of, you know, well, we need to provide for the poor, but they really mean just like give to this charity or something like that. Right. When it comes to, no, let's change things for real, the entire system. Nobody, either people don't want to do it really, or they think the way to go about it is just by having a revolution, like we talked about before, where it's like, just destroy everything. And then, you know, it'll have to be rebuilt, but they're not actually considering like the reality of everything that it takes to make that happen. To like, okay, you actually have to build something. Let's sit down. It's a really, I like this phrase that Cam uses a lot. It's a low vocabulary solution to the problem. or a low vocabulary way of thinking about getting to the solution, but it's not the solution.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, yes, things do have to be rebuilt. They have to be completely changed. But just destroying it without having a plan to actually rebuild it, that's stupid.
Like if your car wasn't working, like if the engine, like something was going off with it, would you just be like, fuck it, scrap it, drop out the engine.
Sledgehammer.
throttle-
Yeah, yeah. Take a wrench to it and start slamming it.
And that's what I guess we would mean by a low vocabulary solution. It's like you're not being creative at all. You're just like, oh, I have hammer, break,
Me
right?
smash car.
Yeah.
Smash car. Car not work. Smash car. Build new car.
Yeah.
Do you know how to
Car
build
to
a
work.
car? Like nobody. Like, have you ever built a car before? No. But somebody's gonna come up with the answers, right? The rich people. Yeah, but you want to like tax the rich people so there's no more rich people.
Right.
Where do you get the fucking money from to live?
Such a
Is
great
it
Right.
example.
The whole taxation thing still fits into money is limited, the value is equal to profit, and so forth. You know,
right.
and another thing too. So looking at the point of, oh, you know, how can we possibly change the system? Like, well, it doesn't seem impossible when you start changing the system inside of you.
Yeah.
Because the system inside of you is literally all the things that come up automatically, like what you automatically feel comfortable with, what automatically makes you feel happy, satisfied, excited, passionate, and so forth. That's the system that's in you. It's a system, meaning it gives you automatically an answer, a result, a focus point. And so it's like if you build a business in this world, you automatically have a focus point. Profit at all costs. You know what I mean? Always making more money, profit. That's the focal point. So how do you question that if you can't question the system inside of you? But when you start changing the system inside of you, and I mean, if you really think about it, let's just be clear about it. You've been brainwashed from the moment you've been born, right? Like, for example, Asif, when you were talking about Max, imagine you have a child and they're like, oh, what happens when you die? And you're like, well, if I tell them what happens when you die is you don't exist, they're going to be afraid. So don't worry about it, honey. Like, you know,
Angels will come
everyone
down.
goes to, you know, what happened to grandma? She's rotting in the ground.
She's in a better place.
Oh no, she's in a better place. Like, really?
Better
It's
than
a
here.
better place? Yeah, it's better than here. Oh, okay, good. I don't need
That's
to change
so. I never even realized that they're in a better place. It's like, oh,
Right.
Yeah,
It's a
wow.
better place.
why didn't I kill myself? Like, why did I go there?
Right.
now.
So do you, at that moment, do you need to question the way you're living or anyone's living anymore?
No.
You don't, because why? There's a better place and you get there. How do you get there? You die.
And it's
There's
anybody
really no-
always. Like, it doesn't matter if my uncle was an asshole. Like, he's always in a better. Like, you know what I mean? Everyone's always going to the better place.
Yeah, like if you're like a pedo and you die and you go to a better place,
What does that
does
say?
it better for everyone else? Like, it doesn't
Yeah,
make sense. You know, and they say like, well, everyone can be forgiven. He's like at the last minute, I accept Jesus Christ. Like, made it. But he didn't change.
Right.
You
know
know
what I
what?
mean?
Hey, real quick, in Islam, they said if the last word that you speak is La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, like basically the statement of like I believe in God and Muhammad was the last messenger. It's like then you're good. And I remember I would think about that so much. Like if I get into a car accident and I feel like my life fading out of me, just La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, and I'm good. I could, dude.
It's a cheat
You know what?
code.
I would think exactly that another cheat code. There's so many cheat codes, dude. If you rub an orphan on the head, you get the amount of good deeds written in your book equal to the number of hairs on the orphan's head. So I'm just thinking about looking.
If you
Wait,
rub
what?
if you rub what on your head?
If you rub an orphan's head, an orphin,
Ugh.
and I've heard
Not
this.
if you rub
I didn't
them
read it.
on your head.
You have to rub your head.
That's why I thought like a balloon.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
like hair sticks up.
But seriously, right? I used to think, I'm like, where can I find these fucking orphans, dog? So I can rub my hand on their head and get the 10,000 good deeds or whatever. I don't know how many hairs you have on your head, right?
Now I'm starting to understand like all of like the
priesthood and-
association with Islam and all that stuff. It's starting to make sense. It's
Mm.
like they're trying to get the orphans.
Well, see,
Fucked up.
these were some of the things I was told. I think in different cultures, because everyone's vocabulary is so
Well, like in Africa, they have like if you have like an albino, like their body parts are magical and shit like that. So like they
That's
like hunt these
sick.
people down. Yeah, they have like albino people are like mutilated and shit because they're always like getting their
Oh.
body parts chopped and stuff.
Dang.
Oh,
Yeah, it's fucked,
people,
man.
people want them. People want
They
them.
want their body parts like to like they're
Oh.
like fucking Lucky Charms or something.
Oh, but it's not like, oh, that person's like, wow, let's listen to them. It's like, oh, let's eat them.
Let's I want his foot around my neck or something, you know? Some weird shit. It's all like voodoo and all that crap, you know? But yeah, it's no different than I drink your blood and eat from your flesh and I become one with the Holy Spirit and shit. How is it any different than that?
And that's what I think. I was like, man, if I was just a total fucking asshole, but I say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah before I die.
You keep saying that on this podcast. Are you expecting to die?
Yeah. Yeah. You never know, right? But you know what I mean? It was like, going back to what you were saying, it was just like, so what if the pedophile just fucking right before he dies is just, you know, he's good? And
does it make any sense?
Should I say I believe in Jesus Christ, or should I say the Muslim one?
What if you say both at the same time?
Exactly. Then I'd be good, right? No. But it has to be the last thing you say.
So say the first one first, and then the last.
Well, with Christianity, as long as you accept Jesus.
Okay, I'll accept it.
So just accept him now, just in case.
Yeah.
And then you do the last part. I'm thinking maybe you could get in there.
Wait. What do you mean by accept Jesus? Like, do I just have to say it?
No, accept. Just anything but Jesus.
Do I have to sign something? Like, I accept. You just say, I accept Jesus.
That's like the terms and conditions, you know.
Okay. Yeah, just scroll through. I accept Jesus.
Yeah. Okay, give me one click. Yes, I accept.
Okay, give me the account.
It's funny because some people get so offended by it, by what we're saying, but they'll literally not lift a finger to do anything in this world to make any difference whatsoever for anybody, whether they're Christian or not. And no, they'll be like, oh, but I helped my parents, you know, when they were in their fucking whatever nursing home or some shit. And it's like, yeah, okay, so what? What does it matter?
I
Is it gonna make any difference?
10% of my income to charity.
Right.
Or
Right. That's most popular.
I felt it, and so that's just as good as doing it.
But you didn't have to change who you are.
But I felt like I'm so sad about that.
But come on, man.
I feel this in my heart. You guys are being
And
like,
you know what though?
blasphemous.
It's like, it's not that we don't care about the people who would theoretically be benefiting from the charity or like this person's grandparents or whatever. It's just like, why are old people growing up in an environment or like living in an environment where they, like when you're super old, you're not just taken care of automatically.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Or you have to sacrifice taking care of your family because you got to make money, for example, whether as your parents as they get older or your kids when they're younger. Do you know what I mean? Like why should a woman ever have to worry about her security and safety and getting food for her kids when they're little? You know, like why? And that's what we're saying is like, yeah, it's actually easier to take care of your family when they're old than it is to actually go stand up in this world. And saying that, knowing that many people aren't going to do what we're suggesting or what we're talking about. So it's like, we realize we're just speaking to those who like hear this and they're like, man, I've been looking for a real purpose and this makes sense,
And I wanted to hit on that point because there's going to be a lot of people who listen to this because generally speaking, it's people who are in self-perfected or, using the tools and things like that. Just because you're using the tools doesn't mean you're going to get it all. Just because you started using the tools, it's been a month, 3 months, 6 months, it doesn't mean you're just going to get it all. And the reason why you wouldn't get this is, well, let me know what you guys think, but I see two reasons. One of them is you are struggling financially. That's the only thing you can think about right now. It's like things are so tight for you that like you're like, okay, like how's this going to help me make money? And if it doesn't, like you're not registering that this is the way you get yourself out of that position. But that's okay. Focus on that to get your purpose should be get yourself out of that shit so you can start considering more. And the second reason would just be you're just really self-interested right now. Like the more
Is that the same reason?
they are, but again, vocabulary, right?
Hey, stop touching your mic.
Stop touching it. I keep touching it. Sorry. Is the
mine's free floating, so it's easy for me not to do it.
I know. I need to get one of those. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You have a laptop stand too, right?
Yeah.
I might do that to elevate things.
But go into what you mean about being self-interested, because I think sometimes people maybe will feel like they're being judged about it, which is fine. But like instead of judging yourself of like, oh, I'm not self-interested, or what do you mean, like, because that's when you start going into all this defensiveness about like the things you do that are good. But like maybe go into what you're thinking when you say that.
Well, a good example is I think all of us, right? We're supporting people, right? And they're doing this and like, holy shit, like, wow, this process really fucking works. And then they'll be like, you know, for example, I'm just going to give a caricature of it, right? But it's like, oh, I was fucking this girl and like my dick wasn't working. And so like, what do I need to do? Like, what can I put in this thing to like make it work, right? Like,
What's the
what can I-
process?
you know, what's the process for me to like just fucking, because I could just program myself, right? And what I'm saying is, when you don't consider what would actually be bad, like, okay, imagine it's like you have these tools and somebody's like, okay, I'm stabbing myself right now, but how do I make it so the stabbing doesn't hurt?
Yeah.
I'm like, stop fucking like, why are you stabbing yourself?
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying with that is, the point of this is for you to challenge what you value, because it's what you value, what you place value on, that's what's fucking up your life. Like, you think that X is going to make you happy when what you're telling me, what you're looking at advice for is like, this thing doesn't actually make me happy. How do I make it make me happy? I'm like, that's not the thing that makes you happy, you idiot. Like, you're acknowledging it right now that that's not working for you. There's a reason for it. And so, and when I'm saying this, it's like, that was totally me. Like, when I was beginning, it took me a while to understand, oh, I'm not happy because I'm not considering all pieces of my life. Like, I'm just acting in my own self-interest. And because of that, within myself, I'm experiencing cognitive dissonance that I have to suppress because I want to make a difference in the world. I'm doing air quotes. I want to make a difference in the world, but I'll do it once I get money. I'll do it once I get rich. But I'll never actually be able to do that because I know I pride myself on being a good person, but deep down, I know I'm a fucking asshole. You know what I mean? You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's like, you're like, yeah, like I 100%. I go, you know, I'm always willing to help people, lend a helping hand, whatever bullshit, make people smile, whatever. But you know that you're just a loser, like you're just a pussy, and you wouldn't actually do anything in terms of change structurally what your life looks like. You like, as in, I had what I wanted to do before all of this. This is what I want to do. And then I thought that me working on myself and doing all that stuff would just be able to like make me go after what I want more. So for example, it's like, imagine if I was a rapist. And yes, I am calling whoever is self-interested equal to that of a rapist. So listen carefully, okay?
I'm like, it's not hard to imagine.
but you know, like think about this point. Okay?
Hold on, real quick, before you go into it, what is a rapist after?
The energy experience of power and getting their gratification at any expense.
Yeah.
Right. How is that
Pretty much.
different than fucking just sitting around playing video games all day?
Exactly. Well,
And
one,
especially
with-
when you
with-
consider the money system that's designed so that the companies will spend all this money and marketing and so forth to make money to make the video games for you to sit and basically whack off to, and literally make no difference in the world just so you can sit and play video games. You don't even know why you're doing it.
And
you know.
Well, and think about this. So some people would say, "Oh, well, the rapist is actually harming another person, and the other
Right.
person is traumatized or whatever."
Right.
But think about this fact: you use an iPhone or you wear Nike shoes, where there are literally factories in China where they have nets around the windows because people are trying to kill themselves by jumping out of the windows and getting caught in the net so they can't die.
Wow.
So you participate in the same money system that's creating an equal amount of abuse. It just doesn't look the exact same as raping a woman or whatever. It's still the same fucking thing. People are being raped in their day-to-day living because it's so shitty. And
It's
that's
just
what
you're
we're all
doing it
creating.
in a way where you don't have to feel like the abuser.
yeah, like
Yeah.
what?
Even
like, what
if you're
the-
like, well, hold on. Even if you're like, oh, I buy fair trade coffee though. Even if that stuff's still going on, and you're just playing video games, and not doing anything about it.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying? It's not
Exactly.
even about whether you're participating. It's about whether you're allowing it to happen and what's important to you. Like, why wouldn't that be like, I need to do something about it fundamentally, not just do something that makes me feel like I'm doing something, like actually do the thing that would solve the problem.
So we're gonna circle back around to the rapist point to put a pin in that. But what was that movie? I think it was called Million Dollar Baby or something like that. Do you guys remember that? There's something to do.
Was it like about boxing or something? Is that the one you're talking about?
No. Oh, maybe I'm just getting.
Are you talking about the one where the guy wins the game show stuff?
I don't know. I never even seen it.
Slumdog Millionaire.
Is that what you're talking
No,
about?
no, I never even seen it. But this is the
Okay.
concept. It's like
Okay.
you push a red button, and somebody in the world dies, but you get $1 million.
Oh, that's not that movie. That's a
No.
different. I don't
what
know
is-
what that movie is.
Okay.
But that's not that one.
But so
Yeah, I didn't
anyway,
know about that movie, but it sounds interesting.
it's pretty old. But
So basically somebody dies and you get money, but it's like you had to push.
and someone's
By the
like,
way, there was experiments that were done similar in nature to that.
which ones?
Um,
The
I'm
electric
trying
shop
to remember
one.
what they were called. Yeah, the electric. I mean, obviously you're not getting $1 million. That was just because an authority was telling you, which is even sad.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just like, I don't want to get in trouble, you know. Like, I don't want this guy to think I'm like,
So
not
like
doing
you,
what-
you came to participate in an experiment, and okay, here's the experiment. Kill the person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, they're like, no, like seriously, they'd be like, okay, up the voltage, and you're
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
this would kill.
Yeah,
me.
they
You're
could
like,
even like hear them like screaming. It was like fake, it was fake screaming, but
they're
still.
like, I should do it, right? He's telling me I should do it. Okay,
He's wearing a lab coat.
exactly. Jesus,
And
he is wearing a lab coat. Okay,
Yeah. It's like those coronavirus doctors.
yeah. But the ones wearing the lab coats that say it's not a big deal, don't listen to those ones.
You know what?
Yeah.
Like to that point, it's like you guys have all watched that Ronald Bernard clip, right? Or
I didn't actually see it yet.
you
It's in
haven't
my
seen it
watch
yet?
later. Yeah. I was
Dude.
driving and I didn't realize it was in some
Yeah,
different
this
language.
is
I'm
Dude.
glad. Yeah,
you have to watch it. It's-
Okay, I will.
that got me, man. That got me. I still have like 10 minutes left of it, but that got me real good. What were you gonna
It's-
say about it, Drake?
But basically, like he basically describes how, and it's
And
something,
and don't go too much into it because I want people to watch it, right? But get the what you want to say out.
it's pretty much like the crux of it. It doesn't give like all the details.
even if
Yeah.
you still
Okay.
gotta watch it. Yeah.
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 But it's basically how, and I've heard this so many times before, especially, from Cam and,
Yeah.
and Avery,
Avery,
like,
yeah.
and within the Destiny group and all that. But how for the elite, it's like a game. It's like they're, and you've heard this like in mainstream, even how it's like they're playing a game with our lives. Right. And how they have created the rules of the game, and then they all participate within this game, just like, and they know what the rules are. So it's like, okay, you have to do it. And it's like almost as if they're challenging themselves by creating all these rules that if somebody else came in and tried to do what they're doing, they'd fuck it up because they don't know all the rules and everything. And then they could be like, ha, you fucking lost. We kill you, which is crazy.
And there's one aspect of it with when they were talking about Iraq, right? About how the boycott of Iraq, but they still need to do business together.
Right,
So they're
right,
saying in public they were enemies,
right.
but then behind closed doors, like, okay, so how are we gonna make this work? Still looking like enemies, but still being able to do the transactions.
Yeah.
I was trying to. There was something that came up. I was focused on the video, but I was like, that reminds me of something. I couldn't, but I just realized what it reminded me of. I don't know if you guys know this or heard of this, but rappers will pretend they're like
Having a
in
beef.
fights with other rappers
Yeah.
for publicity.
Yeah.
But they're actually cool behind closed doors. It's like the exact same fucking thing. It's so weird. But I think the pinnacle of that video was realizing that, all these questions. Why is it that we're totally fucking enslaved? Why is it that, they created this system that we can't, that everybody only makes enough to be a slave? And like, why is it that we have to suffer our whole lives, all that stuff, right? Why is it that this world is the way it is? And you realize there's no fucking reason. It's not just no reason. It's what he says is the pinnacle of his story. I was like, again, I've heard Avery say that 100 times. I've heard Cameron say that 100 times. They're just like matter of fact. It's like, yeah, that's the truth of it. I was like, there was something, watching him go through that where I was like, wow, I cannot deny that. I was like, holy fuck. That's all this is for. That's
Yeah.
what we're participating in. Every time we just do something just to make money, what we're supporting is that.
Yes,
And it was like the most disgusting, evil thing, right?
I'm definitely gonna have to include a link to that video for this one.
Yeah.
But
What's the
also
name of it? What's the name of it? It's Ronald Bernard interview with an insider, with a financial insider, part 1.
something like that.
Something like
I don't
that.
know. But I do also want to bring in this other point, going back to, okay, the reason why you wouldn't do this because you're self-interested, or just focused on your finances, which is again self-interested. There's also another thing within that is not participating in the group, right? So I was thinking about how when I was younger, I'd hear like successful people and they'd tell their stories of how they came up and stuff. And I would just think to myself, man, if only I were friends with them, when I was younger, they were younger, like during that time, then I'd be here, I'd be at that level of success too. And thinking to myself, like, the only thing that I don't know is I don't know what to do. And so if I would have just been around them, they were making all the right moves, I would have just done whatever they did. I would have been, I would have been willing to do it. But it's funny, especially being a part of this group, you find out what you're actually willing to do, like who you actually are within it. And you find out, like, and there's two ways to consider this. There's the one way of considering it of what the system wants and what you'd have to do to be successful in the system. And if you were just going along with that, what you would not be willing to do or willing to do. And that's like, there's some fucked up shit there, right? And then there's what you have to be willing to do to be successful and to actually do what's best for all. And what you have to be willing to do in order to change yourself, really just challenging yourself to change yourself, to move yourself from where you are to get to that place. And it's so interesting to see the thoughts that come up just within my own self, because I can't speak for anybody else's thoughts, but I can speak for my own thoughts and what's come up within myself as far as challenging myself. And, I thought I'd be willing to just do whatever it takes. But clearly I want to hold on to this comfortability, or, just the way that things were, what I'm used to, the familiarity. And obviously, yeah, go ahead.
That's why I've, for a long time, said, because I realized it's like, if you're listening to this podcast, for example, and you have the starting point of you want to be successful, right? If you just try to go the traditional route of what you think of self-improvement and all that stuff, you're never going to be successful. You weren't destined to be successful. And that's the reality of it. Just because, like what Drake just said, is you aren't willing to do what it takes in the normal sense. Because in the normal sense, to be successful, to go watch that Ronald Bernard interview and you'll see.
Yeah.
And it's not that you necessarily have to directly do a lot of that evil stuff. It's just, but you have to be okay with it. Like, who do you think Bill Gates knows? And like the kind of stuff they're into. Doesn't mean Bill Gates is necessarily into that stuff, but why has he been to like Jeffrey Epstein's island like 20 times or whatever? You know what I mean? Like, and he didn't know what was going on. Like, he's a smart guy. You see what I mean? But it's like, you're in that world, you have to play a certain game. And so that's why I'm saying there's so many people that we talk to where it's like young people that are like, oh, I want to be a billionaire and all this stuff. And it's like, you're never going to be a billionaire. You're kind of a nice guy. Like,
Sorry.
it's not going to happen.
Sorry.
It's not going to happen. It was never part of your, so the fact that you're interested in it though, means you have potential to direct that into, let's make a difference. You can still become successful. To make a difference, you have to become successful. Think about like the story of Jesus, or even Muhammad, if you want to talk about it. So it's either religion. Weren't they successful? How? Like, they were talking to crowds of people. They had followers. They had lots of people listening to them.
Like, if Jesus had Instagram, he would be mad popular.
Right. Like, he would be like Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, you still have to do that. It's just, what do you want to do? Do you want to bullshit people? You want to lie to people? You want to just manipulate them and tell them that they can do X, Y, and Z when really only you're the only one who can actually do it? Like, if you don't look and sound like Tony Robbins, you're not going to be able to apply what he's talking about. Like, just think about it. He's made his whole career on doing what he does. So you should do what he does then, not what you want to do. Do you see what I'm saying? It works for him because he's doing what he does and he is the way he is. So if you want to be successful, then first you have to ask yourself, like, why? What is it that's important to you? And those things will probably change over time. But the way to do it is to stand up in this world, because in order to make a difference in this world, you have to speak to a lot of people. You have to be influential. You have to be persuasive. All the skills that you would need to be successful in the system otherwise. It's just what's your starting point in doing it. And so if you just don't care and you just are ruthless and you want to make money and that's it, then why would you even be listening to this? See what I mean? Like, because that's not what we're talking about. And unfortunately, the people who really are ruthless aren't going to tell you how to do it. That's the interesting thing. All they do is look for people who are ruthless that will kind of go along with what they want to do. You see what I mean? Like, that's what they're looking for. They're not trying to help anybody out. They're competitive. So unless it serves them, they're not interested. That's not what we're doing. What we're doing is we're really here to make a difference, but we also have all of the same desires of wanting to be successful and have a good life and all those things. So it's not that you have to sacrifice one for the other, but you then have to develop a set of skills that would be the same set of skills you would have to have otherwise. It's just, do you want to do all the evil shit? Or do you want to do something that really makes a difference? Did you have to choose? You still have to develop the skills. But if you're not evil, ruthless, you just don't care about anyone else and you don't care who gets hurt. Well, if you already have that within you, you would already be doing it, is what I'm saying. So let's say that's not the case. Well, unfortunately, in the system we live in, that's still not good enough. Because if you don't have that in you, then you're just going to eventually lose. Do you see what I mean? Because the people who you're going to be competing against, they don't give a fuck. So what's the alternative? You have to be a part of a group. You see what I mean? Because that group support of everybody working together with the same common purpose is what will support you. It's like, imagine you're in Hollywood and you're an actor and you support Trump. When do you think you're going to get the next movie deal?
You ain't.
Never. You see what I mean? But if you had a network of people who were in the movie industry that had lots of funding and had access to studios and all that stuff, and they all like Trump, it wouldn't be a problem, would it? Why is it a problem for you to be supporting Trump as a movie actor?
Because all your bosses and owners and people with money.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, we don't even have to go into the why that is, but it's just a fact. Like, all of the major points, they all want you to say you like Biden or whatever the thing is my point. Right? So if you're not going to go along with all the evil shit and you go into that business deal and you're like, well, I'm not okay with this, what do you think they're going to say? You know what I mean? Like, well, fuck off. Like imagine you're going to go do a deal where you're going to supply some pharmaceutical company, and then you find out that they're creating a drug that's been tested, and you find out it's going to like hurt a bunch of people. Right? And you're like, look, I'm not okay with that. You guys got to change that. And they're like, see you later.
Like we need a supplier.
Like, what do you mean? Like, you're not okay with that? What are you talking about? What the fuck does you have to do with anything? You just supply the whatever. Like, that's how reality works. You know what I mean? Like think if you're the CEO of Apple or whatever, they know that their iPhones are being created with slave labor, essentially, in conditions where people, like Mitch was saying earlier, right? Where it's like people are jumping off buildings and shit. Do you think they don't know this? How are they okay with it? Like, how would they not just be like, look, guys, we need to stop right now and figure out how to do this otherwise. Right? And then they'll also at the same time preach about social justice and all this stuff. You know, like, it's more important about a transgender child feels like they have the right color dress or something. And you're like, that's what's important to you. And over here, like, people are jumping off buildings because the conditions that it's like, well, but we don't run the factories. I mean, that's not our problem. We've looked into it and we've asked them to make changes and they said they would. It's like, you don't actually care. You see what I mean?
Right.
And so if you are like not wanting to play that game and you actually want to make a difference, that's what this is about, what we're doing,
Mhm.
because I don't want to play that game. And so then what's really interesting is then you have to now start to root out all those points within yourself where you actually still don't care.
Mhm.
Because you can think that you don't care just because you're not the one sacrificing children or something, but you're still placing value on things in a certain sense remaining the way they are. And the thing is, you can complain about that, but then still participate in the system, not realizing it's all one system. You can't go and shop at Walmart and then complain about slave labor, because the concept of get things as cheap as possible is what slavery is. Like, think about it. You see what I mean? So you have to look at what you're actually supporting. It's not all obvious, but that's also why, as being a part of this group, it's like you start to now challenge those things. And it's not just about accepting what any one of us say. It's about really looking at it for yourself and asking, okay, do I understand the consequence of what I'm participating in? Right. And then,
The big support to that is the basics video that we made about second order consequences. And it took me a long time. This is when you really find out, when you really realize, not like, yeah, when you really realize you're really stupid, is that you can't see past first consequence, second order consequence. And the result of that is, for example, like when Cameron was bringing up how playing video games is the same fundamental point of a rapist, and Mitchell brought up the objection of like, well, I'm not actually harming people, like that's traumatized harming people. It's like you just have to trace what you're supporting, and your ability to do that will be equal to your ability to process information. But if you look at that point, it's like, okay, well, what I was going to say with the press the button, like imagine you there's a button that you could press. You're standing outside your front door and there's people walking around, right? Like it's just your neighbors or whatever. And it's like, if you press this button, you'll get $1 million, but there's going to be a guy who parachutes down and like runs up to the neighbor who's walking across your front yard and grabs them and like strangles them and like stabs the shit out of them. Everyone would be like, whoa, like probably I'm not going to do that.
Oh,
probably.
Probably.
Yeah, probably.
But now it's like,
You're
okay,
like, how much money is it again?
yeah.
it's like
2 million.
Can you make
That-
it 2 million?
Would you do it for
all
2
right.
million?
like
10
imagine
million?
like let's say that question comes out, how much? Maybe I'll do it for 2 million. I'll do it for 10 million, right? But what if it was like that exact same thing, except it wasn't one person, it was like 10 people. And let's say, oh, they wouldn't make it so savage. Like if you press this button, you'll get $1 million, but someone somewhere is gonna die.
Peacefully in their sleep.
Exactly. There you go. Right. It's like, but they had a whole family to provide, whatever. It's like someone's going to die. I mean, you're going to consider it a lot more. And what does that say about us? It's like, if I don't feel bad about it, if I can't see it and I don't feel bad about it, then it doesn't exist. Like it's, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like it doesn't
And
actually.
let's take it even a step further of like,
Mm.
okay, you'll get $1 million if you'll never even have to notice or even be aware of it.
Mm.
But somebody somewhere, lots of people will have to live their entire lives literally working in sweatshops.
In complete abject poverty.
And you'll never notice it, you'll never even come across it, but it will happen. Because that's reality. And I want to also add something real quick, Asif, which is that doesn't mean you can't play video games. It doesn't, because like, and I'm saying that I don't play video games. I don't sit around doing it or anything. But what I'm saying is, if you go, well, I'm not going to play video games then. Okay, problem solved. It's like, yeah, but do you use money? And this is really the point of what we're saying about it, is like just money itself, the structure of the system through which it moves and why it moves is supporting all of that stuff. And it requires all of that stuff to continue. So even though you're doing something that seems like, how does this actually hurt anybody? It's like, how did it arrive in your presence? How did it get in the store on the online shop that you downloaded it from? Why did someone create that shop?
Like what you were just saying about Apple, right? Like if they were actually serious about it, they would be like, okay, stop all production of iPhones right now. No more iPhone 12 or 13, whatever the next one is. Stop until we figure this out. Would you support that? Within yourself, would you be like, oh, well, you can't do that? Like
I get it. I mean, you got to
we
use some phone.
you gotta get the iPhone, right? It's like, right. I'll be honest. The first reaction was like, that'd be crazy if they stopped production. but that's me supporting. It's like, let's see our priorities.
But
Yeah,
here's the thing too. Even if Apple did that, would it change anything?
No, to be clear.
Because what would happen is the moment they did that, another company would step up and they would make the money. And we have
Exactly.
to understand that. So that's why we're not advocating like,
Boycott this place.
yeah, like any of that bullshit. It's not going to change anything. It's about, okay, here's the system. The system says as long as you make money, then you can grow, you can have influence. And we're saying, okay, let's work together. Let's provide something that will actually wake people up and help them see through everything that's going on. And then also put ourselves into a position to be able to change the laws and so forth. So it's all done in a legal way, the same way that it's being done right now, where just the consequence, the result of what's being decided is not best. So it's not about trying to go against the system. It's about going into it and being a part of it, but just with a different starting point.
Right, because then you have all those people who are just like, I'm just gonna give up I'm just not gonna participate, or I'm gonna give up everything, or I'm gonna go live off the grid, or I'm gonna, just boycott what I think is wrong. But it's like, that's just selfish. Like,
it's the same thing as just donating to charity and being like, well, I did my part, I helped out or something.
exactly, yeah. It's like, what's the result of that, really?
Yeah.
And just like you quit video games. Like, what was really cool about that Owen Benjamin trunk catches Brovid
Brovid-19.
3366.
Definitely getting deplatformed. Here we go.
That's all we had to do is just mention Owen Benjamin.
Exactly.
It's like he was talking about becoming a nationalist, like the quote unquote sovereign citizen. He talks about how that's but he was talking about like what it actually takes to just like become, he calls it a nationalist. I don't know if that's the right name, but it's just like you're just
national or something.
Yeah, an American national.
Yeah. But the point that he was making is you're not like pulling one out from under them. If you do it right, they're just like, okay, cool, here you go. Like, you don't need license.
Good luck.
Like, that's what he's saying. He's like, dude, I'm completely fucking off the grid. I got my own milk, all this stuff, and I'm still not even at that level.
Yeah.
The amount of responsibility it takes to understand what it takes to provide for yourself without using money, without you having a driver's license, without having car insurance, like all these things, the amount of responsibility that actually takes is immense. And the point is that you're not actually considering the consequences or just the strings in the system that you're playing a part of. And what I was saying at the beginning of, well, not the beginning, but the reason why you wouldn't be able to consider this is either because you're ultra self-interested or you're just focused on finances. I meant like you're in survival mode. Like you don't have the luxury to focus on anything else right now.
See, but that's what self-interest is. Just so everyone's clear. It's like we think it means like you just have these desires that only you care about. And that's like an expression of it, but it's
like, we're not talking about like an arrogant, egotistical mania. Like
imagine like you hear someone like making a commotion downstairs and then you realize people broke into your house and they're like coming for you. Like, how would you be? You'd be like, fuck, I gotta survive, gotta hide, gotta run. Like, you would be totally self-interested. You see what I mean? Like, you would only be thinking about like you and your survival in that moment. And that's in essence what we're all doing. It's just that we've automated a system that we've become totally dependent upon. It's like the extension and the expression of that at all times. But then it's like it consumes us. Like, we have to always be like giving our allegiance to it in some way. So even the moment that someone says like maybe we could change that, it's like, well, no, you can't change it. It's like the system just starts talking, And so, like, to your point about this, the responsibility implied, we're not suggesting that anybody go off the grid and do all that stuff. Like, I'm not interested in that. It doesn't make sense. But my point is, you don't realize how dependent you are on the system. So when we talk about changing it, it's like it comes up in this point, but it's not about primarily going and changing things. It's about changing within yourself, the starting point of why you're here. Because the resistance to changing the system is really just the resistance to changing within yourself. That's why, it's really cool having this particular discussion that we're having right now, because it's like, look at what you actually care about and the fact that you don't care. And it's not like I sit around all day caring about things and caring about other people. It's just looking at, okay, where is the points within myself where I make excuses that I should just go and just focus on being happy and finding things that make me happy. And I think I'm fortunate at this point because I see through that to where it's like, there may be something that I get excited about, but I know at the end of the day, it's not ever going to be fulfilling or worthwhile ultimately in itself. It's just a game. Do you see what I mean? And so if you really want to make a difference, like for real, within yourself, within your life and everything, you have to look at what's the ultimate point that I can work at, you know. And even within, like we've talked about this before, within the law of attraction and all this stuff, what do they say you should do? You should follow your bliss, right? And you should have the dream that would take you lifetimes to fulfill, the biggest possible dream you could possibly have. But I mean, what's bigger than what we're talking about? Because people take that as like, well, okay, I'd build a skyscraper to the moon or something, you know? And it's like, yeah, that might take you lifetimes to build. Yeah. But you know what I mean? It's not really like it's just like that's not real. It's not something that actually means anything. So imagine what would actually cause you to have to change fundamentally, completely who you are. Well, that would be standing up and saying, you know what? Let's actually create a world that would be that heaven that everyone's looking for. That would actually represent that.
And
because if we have,
go ahead. When you were saying, you know, like we still want to be successful. We still want to have a great life, have the best foods and the best place to live. But it's within the context of doing what's best. What Kevin Trudeau says that makes so much sense now if you apply it to this concept, right? Because we had that talk on the Self-Leaders Call. It's not just about the money you make. It matters how you make it, right? The process that you take to get to where you want to go. He says, it's not about the money you make. It's about the person you become. And that's what actually fulfills you. Like if you just won the lottery, you're still going to you're going to have a terrible fucking self-esteem. You're going to lose it all. It's going to be a terrible time. Unless you're smart enough to be like somebody else, like some financial manager that's not me, take responsibility for this. It's like you realize how fucked you are. And so the point within that is, okay, well, acknowledge within yourself that if you got $1 million, you're like, here's what I would spend it on. I would buy this car, or you'd basically blow it all on trying to feel good and then wind up in the exact same fucking point of trying to feel good.
Yeah.
And
there's another point within that as well of like, because I noticed this just within myself in my own process of wanting somebody else to take responsibility.
100%.
Right. And
Yeah.
so like even when things get hard, it's like you just want somebody else to tell you what to do, or like let them take control over, like, okay, it's okay, you know, it's all good, have them ease you, as opposed to you, like with what we suggest within our group is you taking the responsibility, you growing up to the point where it's like, I can handle this, I'm getting better, I'm taking on more responsibility. And so then you can be that kind of person that we're suggesting, of like that person who has the purpose, who actually makes a difference, who's actually like growing and can handle all of this shit. Cause you know, the kid who's thinking, you know, just talking to your significant other or to just someone outside of your comfort zone, like just outside of your friend network, if that's hard, how the fuck are you going to do anything?
Right. Like you'll never be happy because you need to be able to talk to people to be happy, period. And so the point isn't to make communication easier. Let me just communicate through texts, because there's consequences to that, right? It's to support yourself to become better. And Drake, it's such a perfect point because I could just see it within our program. Like I remember, and it all comes back to the education system. We've always had somebody to go to when things get tough, to tell us what to do next, right?
Yeah.
I remember the most stressful fucking times of my life is when I procrastinated so heavily and I had a deadline for some 10-page paper, right? And then you tell your teacher, and maybe they give you an extension on the deadline. And you're like, thank you so much. And then you fuck around and do it again. But
or even just as like just even simpler. Like, I can't figure out the answer to this question.
Right.
Just
True.
go and ask for the answer. You don't even.
You know, I had this professor in at University of Houston, and he's really, I've told you guys about him before, Gordon Johnson. And the guy's like a genius. I mean, he was a distinguished mathematician for the NSA, right? And he would give these problems, and everybody would get a different problem. I mean, like, he would write the problems on the board, and then he would ask, like, who wants to solve that one? And then by that, he meant solve it and then present your solution to the class so they can try to tear it apart. And I remember, because then it's like you would only get maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 problems the entire semester.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Because everybody's presenting theirs. And it's like, there was one person who he failed just because they never went up and did one. And there was one person who went up and did only one, but they kept trying and kept coming back and kept trying to do it. And he gave him like a C. And they never even got it right. But just because they kept going. I think they might have gotten a B, actually. Right? But
You say B for boy?
a B, yeah, I think they got a B or something.
Nice.
But the point is, he didn't fail them, even though they never got one question right the entire year.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So it wasn't about getting it right. It was about trying, right? And not just trying, like applying yourself and not giving up
Right,
and all that.
yeah.
It was really cool. But I remember one time, and this is why I started to realize at that point, like, okay, this is how this is going to go, was I don't think it was me. It was somebody else. I mean, I was like listening to him, somebody asking him a question. And they were like, okay, I solved it. Like, is this right? And he was like, I don't know. And they were like, what do you mean? He was like, I don't know. And they were like, what? Right? But then at the same time, I remember having a conversation. Like, I went into the bathroom that was like near the classroom one time. It was like in between class or whatever. And he was in there,
Classic
like,
Cameron, always going to the bathroom.
always going to the bathroom. He was like in there, right? He had just finished washing his hands or whatever. And he asked me, he was like, how's it going with your problem? And I was like, oh, it's pretty good. I was like, I'm kind of stuck on this one part. Like, I'm thinking this or whatever. And he was like, well, okay. And he started asking me questions about what I was thinking. And I was like, well, I'm not sure. It's like, I'm thinking like this. And he was like, okay. So we were like on the wall is like a tile, like small tiles, right? So there's like grids, like tracing out like graphs. You know what I mean? Like, okay, and like stuff like that, like on this pretend, but like on this tiled wall, right?
Uh-huh.
So in other words, he wasn't unwilling to help you, but he wasn't helping you. He was just asking you questions about what you said.
Yeah.
John Taylor Gatto. He says the real role of education is not to it's to
Deliver facts, right? Yeah.
Deliver facts.
Yeah.
It's to guide students, to
Yeah.
allow them to take responsibility. That's epic.
Right, exactly. So that he was just asking me questions to see like
What
so
you're
I could be
thinking
like
was
the flaw in what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Right. And so versus the student who was like, is this correct? He was like, I don't know. It's kind of like, it's not my job, and I feel like he made this point. It could have just been me projecting it, but I feel like I remember him saying, even if I tell you it's right, how do you know I'm right?
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you just have to expect that I as the authority know it's right, and I'm telling you it's correct, but you're not seeing it's right. So in other words, he could tell me it's wrong, but if I know, then I know. What does it matter whether he said I'm right or not? Versus the class that I took the semester prior to his, which I did well in both classes, but the semester prior to that, I took a class called analysis, and I got like 104%. I hadn't even take the final because my percentage was so high, right? So in other words, I did well in both environments. But in that class, the teacher would just sit up there and lecture the whole time, write out basically every example, explain every theorem, prove every theorem, all the examples and everything. And then I would just write down everything he said, and I would read the book, and I was using my Technotutor at that point as well. And then I would go and take the test, and it would just be like, all right, I've seen this before. I know exactly what to do. Bam. Right? 100 every time. But that other class I was talking about, you go to that class and you would do the test. You hadn't seen these problems before. You're like, fuck, like, okay, let me figure this out. He was more focused on training you how to think about it rather than just memorize the answers to these questions. Do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was interesting because I'm very competitive when it comes to school and stuff like that. I wasn't when I was in high school, but in university I was. And I remember I was taking the course, that same course. Actually, this was a probability course with that instructor, and I was taking it with Katie. And I remember we got our tests back, and I was like, and I remember thinking, yeah, there was this one problem, man. I was having really trouble with it. And Katie was like, really? Like that? I thought that was easy. And we got our tests back, and I got that problem wrong, and she got it right. And I was just like, God damn it. And I remember at that time I was very competitive about it, right? But it's like, but she's actually much better at like systematically going through things than I am, right? And so, but it was interesting because that like challenges the whole ego point and all that stuff, right? But it was also challenging that point of I just need to get the right answer. I need to get the A. And I didn't so much care about what I was studying, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he made this really cool point. He said, you know, I'm not here to give you a grade just to help you pass the class and all that stuff. He's like, from my perspective, if you're getting a degree in mathematics, then you're going to go do mathematics. And so I'm signing off on whether you can do mathematics. You know, so he saw his responsibility in, and so when you look at his, you know, this rate my professor things online,
Yeah.
everybody talks shit about him.
Oh man, yeah.
Everybody like, oh, he didn't even teach anything. But it was always the classes that were like not just the math majors. If it was just the math majors, they liked him, right? But if it was like there's like computer science majors and people that had just had to take a probability course, they just hated him, you know. But I remember in that course, it was like 100 people in the class, and maybe only 10 of us ever did anything.
Wow.
You know, yeah. But it was fun. I liked the course because to me it was like there was only 2 people in the class. I sat at the front, and it was like, but there was all these people behind me. But the point is, it's like you're really. He made this really cool point. He said, when he was a mathematician and he worked for a company, for example, or when he worked at the NSA, he was like, we would have maybe like a satellite that had to hit this receiver, and it would go around once a day or whatever, or twice a day, and it would have to hit this receiver. And so you had to calculate the right everything to make it work properly. So he's like, so if your solution wasn't correct, they're going to spend a lot of money and put it up there, and then it's not going to work. He's like, so my role, if I'm not presenting the solution, was to make sure that my colleagues were getting it right, and vice versa. So that was the way he ran the class, was you present your solution and everyone else is like your colleagues asking questions, like trying to take it apart and so forth. Right. And so part of it was being able to present. And so it was like you were learning these skills that you would think had nothing to do with math if you just are normally used to like high school mathematics, you know, where you're just memorizing shit. What?
Academia. Yeah.
Just memorizing, right? And so I remember the first day of the multivariable calculus course that I took with him. It was my first class with him. He gave us a quiz. And so he assumed you had done first year, second year calculus. And so it was questions like, what is a limit? What is a derivative? Just basic questions, right? And everybody was giving the textbook answers, right? And then he would look at the paper and he was like looking at the quizzes. It was like, you know, the first day, right? And he was like, all right. He was like, Mr. Cope, he's like, you said that a limit is da-da-da-da-da as X approaches whatever, right? And he was like, what do you mean by approaches? And I was like, I'm thinking, oh, I got it right, you know, right? and I'm like, well, you know, as X gets closer to it. He's like, what do you mean gets closer? Like, you know, you're going to see your girlfriend for a date and you get close to her? And I'm like, no, I mean, you know, as it approaches it, as it gets closer to it on the graph. He's like, how does it do it? And he draws a graph. He's like, is it moving? What do you mean? Right. And I'm like, but it was really cool. And then he did that to everybody. And he realized within it, oh shit, I don't actually understand anything in math ever that I've ever learned. I'm just repeating what they told me.
That's great.
Because that's what it rewards.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know how I got on this topic. Somebody else
Talking
can like
about
reel it back
taking
in.
responsibility. And so this is like a good example of how this professor made sure that you were taking responsibility for what you knew or didn't know or how to get to the answer, as opposed to just giving you the answer, right?
The how to think,
right?
the who you become,
right?
But then look at, for example, how we live today. We don't actually take responsibility for very much at all.
Mm.
In fact, the way you would define living in the third world would be like you have to take responsibility for everything in your life. You know what I mean? Like you have to figure out where you're going to get water from, where you're going to like, you know, all that. Like you have to make your own clothes and all that. You know, it's like shit. But then now that we're where we're at in society now, you look at the quality of things because we all want it as cheap as possible. And yet, how do you get good quality if you do that?
That just
You know?
that just clarified a point for me of the people that live in the third world are stronger than us, you know,
Yeah.
because they are taking 100% responsibility for everything in their lives. And if they were in our positions, they'd be like, this is such an easy life.
Yeah. We're like live like kings.
Yeah.
And then when it's like, now you have to consider them as well. Like, I mean, what? Like, oh, what do I have to do something now? And it's like, what are you actually doing? All you're doing is just now. That doesn't mean it feels easy though. And that's what's so interesting about this is in this world that you're in here, where you don't have to face any of that, you still feels like life is really hard.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's kind of the cool point. It's like, what do you have to lose? Your life already sucks no matter where you're at, who you are. You know, it's still, there's existentially something missing. And I think, and I don't think I know what it is. It's, I have no real purpose. I have no real reason to be here. You know, and this is not why people care about heaven. Like, I don't care about heaven. You know, what's interesting when I look at what, if anything, makes me feel kind of, trying to look for the right word, kind of sad. It's that, like, just as an example, it's that when Max is 36, I'll be 72. Well, actually, I'll be a little bit less than that, but I'll be in my 70s.
Wow.
And when Max is 70, I'll be what, 100? Will I be alive then? Do you know what I mean? Like when he's 50, will I be alive? It's like, and it's not just about Max, it's just to illustrate the point, but it's like, there's a certain point where you're going to miss out on something. You're not going to be here anymore. You know what I mean? And it's not that you should live your life in fear of that. It's just, why not really fully do everything you can here while you're here? And that's a really challenging point for anyone to consider because it sounds so, like, what's the word? Like, just irrelevant, or like, you know, chill out, bro. Like, come on. Like, what are you, like, relax. You know what I mean? Like, come on, like, just have fun. Just enjoy your life. Nobody's enjoying their life. Even the people who act like they are, they're not. Because, like, think about any of the people you know that, like, they have money, maybe they go out and they go drinking and they do all these different things, but get to know them personally, and they're very unhappy. They're doing all of that from, like, a desire to try to fulfill something that they don't actually just feel naturally, you know? And we're all living like that. And it's because the total environment that we're in is, by us accepting it this way, it's just not a place that allows for you to just to really be here and just be here and just do what makes sense to do. It's like there's all these rules that are so arbitrary, that are not based on, okay, you're a human being, you have desires, let's support you to look at those and fulfill your sense of wanting to do something that matters, or being important, or really enjoying and having fun. And then we have to find all these ways to do that are literally, somebody was like, I can make money if I create this. And then we're like, oh, that looks cool, let's try that. But you do it and then you're like, okay. And there's people who get super obsessed on, like, rock climbing, and they're just like, they're a rock climber, and that's like their whole life is built around that thing. Or what's that thing where people dressage, you know, where they have the horses that, like, do the stepping and stuff like that. Like, their whole life is that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's actually very low vocabulary if you think about it. It's high vocabulary in the sense of it's a very specialized thing, but they don't really know much about anything else. And I'm not just picking on those particular people. It's like everything becomes about that. Like, think about everything in the world, including sweatshops and poverty and everything, has to exist so that person can, like, focus every aspect of their life on that thing.
on like soccer or skydiving or
Exactly.
yeah.
And it's not that any of these things are inherently bad. It's just, okay, somebody has to step up and take care of everything else.
Hmm.
It's not going to be that person, most likely,
Hmm.
because they've already got their thing, you know? But there's a lot of us who didn't have a thing, you know? And I don't mean that like, oh, I just want a thing. It's like, you don't have a thing because you know it's all just a bunch of bullshit. You're like,
Hmm.
I know if I applied myself, I could be really good at X, Y, or Z. But what's the point?
Hmm.
Like, why?
I
At
know
the end
like
of the day, what am I ignoring? Somebody want to say something?
when I think of things more existentially, right? Where it's like we're you have to choose a purpose for yourself, right? Like when you come here, you have a finite amount of life force. Drake has a certain amount of life force. Mitchell has a certain amount of life force. Cameron does. I do. And we don't know when we're going to die. And it's just considering, okay, if I look at myself as just, you know, my purpose in terms of not what I choose it to be, but what it is right now is whatever I'm giving my energy towards. And I think right now, if you're listening to this and you look at what you're giving your energy towards, you measure it by looking at, you know, one extremely challenging task that Avery had given to me and my brother years ago, and then again recently to all of us, is looking at each minute of your day, not specifically each minute, but where is your time going? You know, minute, moment by moment, task by task. How much time are you spending on things? And do that for 5 days, do that for a week. And you get to see what am I putting my life force towards? And I know a lot of us who would listen to this would think, well, subconsciously, you just wouldn't do it because deep down, you know that if you knew the score on where your life force was going, it would fuck you up. You'd get depressed. You would be like, what the hell am I doing with my life?
That's the cool thing about like removing all those points of entertainment within you. Like when you remove porn, when you remove smoking weed, when you remove drinking, when you remove all this shit, then you realize how just shit your life is.
And that's why Corona has been such an epic time for people who could reflect on themselves, who are self-aware, right? And if you're not, listen to this. Take this into consideration. If coronavirus hit and you ended up doing more of something, what was that thing? That's who you are. As in, if you get your pleasure from perusing, I don't know, Amazon and Lululemon to like buy stuff, or just like watch Netflix, or you know, like sports. I know for like a lot of my male friends, it was a huge fucking problem that sports ended, right? Like a huge deal, right? And not just there's the playing the sport, which I'm like, okay, cool. You know, you can get things from that, right? You get the community, you get the physical activity, right? You get the challenge, all that stuff. Okay. But watching sports, right? It's like, if that's a big problem that's out, well, what is that saying? It's like you've accepted that the main thing, the thing that's going to take up mental space in you, the thing that you've decided that's what I'm here for, is to get absorbed in fantasy land, get totally absorbed in total fantasy land. And that's what watching, you know, these Netflix shows. And like Cameron was saying, is automatically your mind goes into polarity. Okay, so Asif, you don't watch anything. You don't do anything for entertainment, huh? All you do, you're just a fucking robot. You're boring. You just want to, you know, do what's best, blah, blah, blah. No, I guarantee I have more fucking fun than you do. I guarantee it. I am so certain of that because I knew who I was before this, and I was having a lot of fun when I was just self-interested, what I thought was a lot of fun. But in terms of how I experience myself now, like being able to do this, and I don't have to think about anything else. I can be right here with 3 great friends and just express freely. And I know that if I get shit for it, it's a great point of growth for me. It's like an exciting time. There's nothing, I'm not afraid of anything. That, as a burden off of your shoulders, allows you to have more fun than any fucking video game. I was addicted to video games, right? Any video game, any cartoon, anime, drama, document, anything. And if you're not there now, you should ask yourself, if you look at your time, if you look at what you're doing, that is your purpose right now. We made a really important basics video on you're either choosing your purpose and directing yourself to fulfill that purpose, or somebody else has chosen your purpose for you and you're just participating in that. That's what you should look at. Where are you spending your time? Because you as a human being, existentially, you have life force and you're giving your life force to something. And the point being that you shouldn't be happy giving your life force to the football match or, you know, this dramatic television show, or I can't wait to go hang out with my friends this weekend. Those things within themselves, there's nothing wrong with that. But is that your life? Or is that like a small sliver that you enjoy while you're focused on creating something, while you're focused on, okay, yeah, this world's really fucked up. And that's actually why I'm not happy. That's why I keep searching and seeking these things out, because I was abused as a child. And now I think, oh, to express emotion is silly. So I don't want to write, or I don't want to, you know, talk to people about this stuff. Like Cameron said, or I think it was Cameron or Mitchell. It's like, bro, like chill, man. Like, what are you going to think about? Like what's going to happen when you die? Or like, why are you asking me? Like, what do I want to do with my life? Like, just, you know, relax. It's like, you know, we're just having a good time. It's like, really? If you can't even look at that, right? Because there were some people who were applying for the self-perfected group. And the questions are really basic, right? There's two or three questions, right? Two, you know, reaching into you questions. And they were like, whoa, like I never got asked these before. What do I want to contribute? What's my vision for the world? Like, whoa, man, this is crazy deep. And I get that. I totally understand that, because I know that you guys have never been at, right? Like Kian was talking about, you know, we're working with a group of people in Ottawa, and Kian was like, you know what? I said the word dream building. Like, guys, let's do some dream building. They have no idea what dream building is. The average person has no idea what it means to walk through a fear. Like, what the fuck is fear to the average person? Like, Mitchell, what's like if you generalize a recent fear that you had to walk through?
Yeah, like going out door knocking on strangers' doors.
Who's doing, you know what I mean? Like, who's doing that? Who has to push themselves to like conquer that, right?
Hang on, because I like that you said, like, what's the average person think about fear? They don't consider that a fear. They'll look at that and they'll go, oh no, I just don't want to do it.
Right. Thank you. That's something that I've noticed so much is it becomes about, oh, I don't want that. Like, I don't like that kind of stuff. That's like what they're absorbed in. And I remember being like that, is like, that's not for me, because it's fucking scary. But that's the thing. That's the dopamine shit. Mitchell, you're shaking your head. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, I didn't like it either.
Right. Exactly. Right.
But I know it's the best thing to do. And afterwards, it's just the greatest feeling. Better than any video game, any drug, any whatever. It's like, holy shit, I thought I could not do that, and I did not want to do that, and it was fucking scary, and I did it anyway, and I actually made some results from it. This is so cool.
Remember, like we had a strategy call, like a small group of us, right? And you were talking about that point about, and I was so glad you mentioned it. It's like all those things that we're really afraid of. You were talking about how when you do it, it's like the greatest fucking thing.
Mm-hmm.
You remember talking about that?
Not in particular, but I'm sure.
It was on one of our Friday calls, like the
Mm-hmm.
Techno Tutor like strategy call.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of looking at that point of like, yeah, like when you reminded me of that, it was like the way you experience yourself after you've conquered something that you believe that you couldn't do before.
Mm-hmm.
The fulfillment or the existential, like, oh shit, like everything becomes clear, everything becomes vibrant and lively. You're like, holy shit.
Yeah, it's almost like you can feel yourself expanding, because then it's like, oh, this thing that I was kind of dreading, I didn't want to do, I did it. Cool. Wow. Now look how much further I can see. And I remember too, different times, if you can imagine your life, like when you felt bliss, you know, however you would define bliss for yourself. I experienced that when I was right in the middle of going out there and moving myself. And it was like all the fears, like, oh, well, just, you know, just go to the next house. Like maybe they aren't home or some shit like that, right? I'm like, okay, that's just ridiculous. So just turn up the driveway, walk, knock on the door, and just be here and just connect. And I remember at like the second door or third door, I was like straight up feeling like ecstatic, just like full of bliss of like, I'm fucking doing this. Like, this is so cool. And then the people on the other end of the door picked that up. And it was just like, it's like, what the fuck was I so concerned about? And I realized it's like, it put it all into perspective because I just went and physically did it. I realized this is what it means to be living my purpose. And does everyone need to go out and door knock right now? Not exactly. I mean, everyone, like, you have to look at that for yourself, but especially if you're like, oh, I could never do that, you should reach out because it will force you to grow and expand more than I had in probably 5 years. I expanded in 2 days of door knocking.
There is an element of that everyone does have to do, though. Maybe not door knocking in particular, but reaching out to other people and talking and having conversations, doing something that's like expanding yourself for sure, right? But also like just keep coming back to the phrase, go and make disciples, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just basically like go out, and if this is what's best, if this is what's actually important, if you actually want to have an impact in the world, you're gonna have to talk to other people. You're gonna have to get other people on board because you're not gonna change the world just by yourself. Imagine if, you know, any particular great leader in the past. Again, you know, Jesus was not by himself. You know, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., not by himself. There were tons of other people also taking on the message and moving within it, physically moving, doing something, right? Everyone. And so this idea that you're going to change the world by yourself is total delusional bullshit. It's impossible.
Yeah. And it's like the word that came to my mind there is like initiate, to go out and to make something happen where there was nothing there before. I mean, that's creation. Like that's you living really as a human, maybe for the first time in your life. If from a child, as being a child, you just listen to authority, you know, because they said so. Oh, I do this and that and blah, blah, blah. You're just like trapped. It's like a pre-programmed robot going through your life. Yet you have this ability to actually decide and choose to do what's best. So just do it.
Those feelings that you described, door knocking, about
Mhm.
that, like, why was I afraid of this, all this stuff? That's exactly how I felt when I made my first live video.
Yeah.
I was like, you know, and afterwards you're like, what the fuck was I afraid of? But holy
Which is funny
shit.
because you were an actor. It's like
Right. And you know what? You know what it actually was? It was speaking about things that I care about.
Yeah.
It's like I would rather just be a puppet, like a
Like
mouthpiece.
read a script, basically. Yeah.
Exactly. So I can say, I didn't come up with, you know what I mean? This is not me. So you can't get mad at me for it. I'm on the more, you know, lower level, deeper levels of it. But it's like when you're expressing who you are and then people attack you, it's like, it is personal. And so I was afraid of that. But the solution that I thought was don't make fucking videos. Right. And it wasn't a thinking process. It wasn't a thinking process. Right. I was just like, yeah, one day. So many topics I want to share about, but it was like, okay, and I have to overcome the point of being a pussy. Like I have to be willing to be under fire and stop being so worried about it. And who you have to become in that process is what everyone wants to be. That's what we're saying, is what you actually want deep down. You know, like if you say, I want this, and you say, why, that's when you'll find out what you actually want. Right. And so it's like, I want I want to work at this place. Why? Because I want to be able to make money. Okay, well, why don't you just work this job? Oh, I don't like that job. Okay, so you want to do something that you enjoy. Okay, well, why do you enjoy this? Well, it's because like I get to like, talk to people and push myself, and it's variety. It's like, okay. So when you keep asking why, you'll find out why you actually want things, right? And what we're suggesting is what you really want is to be someone that you're proud of. To be somebody that you fucking look up to. So that other people look up to you as well. You want to, it's within us to want to support people around us.
You know what though? A lot of people, and I was in this category, have already judged themselves that they're not worth anything. And so like the idea of changing the world and all this stuff is just like, it's not for me because I'm not somebody.
Yeah.
But you can change that. And it's really just the getting rid of over time through layers and layers of that belief that you're not worth something. That's really what original sin is. You know what I mean? It's just the acceptance that you're nothing. Now you can go the other side, which is you believe you're this amazing thing that blah, 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 blah. But that's just the other side of that. It still comes from the same starting point. It's like trying to project that you're something. But the reality is you can be significant. I mean, if you do what is best, just by doing that, you're worth everything. It's like, think about like a tree. Is there one tree that's better than another tree? Not really, not fundamentally. But isn't just that tree existing and being there and fulfilling its purpose, isn't that worth something?
Yeah.
Is that worth more than a Ferrari? I mean, what is the Ferrari worth?
Whatever value we give it.
You can decide, you can deter. It's funny. If something has worth in our current system, it probably means it doesn't have worth. And you can see it very easily by, is the less people that have it, does that make it more valuable?
Mm-hmm.
Then it's worth
that should show you what's not valuable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The less, so if somebody else has to not have it for you to have it, it really just shows you what you value.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about changing the money system, that's really the direction we're going in. It's changing what money is valued as. Like, what's the purpose of it? Why does it exist? Why do we have it? And it's not to say we therefore get rid of it, because a lot of people say, well, let's just go to like resource based or this or that. And it's like, but if you still within yourself have the starting point of, it's valuable if I have it and not other people having it, then how's a resource-based economy going to work?
Resource-based economy is like, let me just exchange things so I can get the diamond. Like,
right. Or like, so I can have, and it doesn't matter if other people do, like that. It's just, that's not going to happen. It's changing what people value, and that it's not going to happen overnight. And that's not an excuse. It's for you to understand that it can't happen overnight because of where we're at. Certain things have to change first. So it's focusing on what has to change so that you can get to that point where then it happens overnight. You see what I mean? Where it suddenly changes. But part of that is changing the environment that children grow up in, because they're growing up in an environment that even the TV programs they watch is like programming them to want to be competitive and spiteful and like manipulate other people emotionally just because that's what they see other people doing. So a lot of things will have to shift and adjust before suddenly the money is valued equally just to like breathing. That's not going to happen overnight, because you have to change certain things. Could it? Yes. Theoretically, everyone could just stop what they're doing and be like, wait a second, why don't we just all value each other equally? And let's start working from that assumption. Then we could all go to work and we could start changing the things we need to change. That's not going to happen. I mean, it could. It just depends on how much pain each individual wants to experience before they realize there's a different starting point to be alive. You see what I mean? Instead of just taking, it's about giving. But trying to give in the current context of the system with the rules that exist, that giving turns into taking. Do you see what I mean? Because it's like you have to go work at a shitty job you don't like so that you can give money to charity. Why? That's not the kind of giving that we're talking about. Imagine giving just means giving your vote to a system that says, okay, everybody gets enough money to live. And it's funny because on the one hand, we say that everybody can't have enough, because where would the money come from? So it thinks that money's limited. But then you say, like, well, they just print money out of thin air. It's like, well, but then that would cause inflation. No, because that's still based on the competitive idea that if we just give people money, people will raise their prices. You see, because there's a supply of money. And it's like, well, that's still, you see, the problem is people not changing the starting point of why they're doing what they're doing. You see what I mean? Because if the goal of running a business is just to make money, but if money was freely available, then why would people try to raise their prices to get more money?
So for those who are listening, it's like the reason why inflation happens is because the people who are supplying goods or services this is one of the big factors in it, is like, okay, so let's say if everybody just started getting an income of $10,000 every month, it's like the people who are supplying things are like, okay, well, everybody has $10,000 more a month, so we could just start charging more to take more of that. So what I'm understanding you're saying is, if our starting point is just make the most money, then that's always going to be a problem.
But also, all of the examples where inflation has become a problem was in an isolated country that was being isolated by the world on purpose. Do you see what I mean? So yes, if you then in one economy that's isolated from the world just starts to print their own money, and the other economies who need to do trade with that economy are like, we're going to devalue your currency, then suddenly, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you as a country, we're like, no, we're going to be self-sustaining. We're going to create the money that we need. We're going to provide the bucks we need. You know what would happen? Immediately, every other country would gang up and go to war with you. Because that's not what the people who are benefiting from the idea of lack existing want. They don't want people in this world going, hey, everybody should have enough. And you're not allowed to have more until everyone has enough. That doesn't mean, now here's the thing, we don't need to take in order to do that. All we need to do is change the rules. That's it. People can still have a lot. That's not the issue. The issue is there's people who don't have enough, and that doesn't make sense, right? So I guess we can wrap it up now, because I know one of you has another meeting you have to get to, but let's just put it like this. If you're within yourself still feeling that point of like, I'm not happy with my life, there's something missing, then I'm telling you, this is the thing to look at, is to work together with us and actually go and make a difference. And you don't necessarily have to have it all figured out yet, because it'll make sense as you go, because you have to make it make sense for you to actually be effective within it. But the point is, that's who we're looking for, is those people who are like, they're not so far gone where they're just off in la la land, where like there's no coming back. They're just fucked. It's people who are like, I don't want to just go along with the way things are. I see the problems. I want to make a difference, even though I don't see any other way to actually do all the things that I want to do, but I still want those things too. So you're going to have that too. Just like Kevin Trudeau says in Your Wish Is Your Command, right? He says, who do you listen to? So realize people are going to listen to you because they see that you have the things that they want: a stable relationship, a home, money, the things that the things that make life enjoyable from a material perspective. All those things are good, right? It's just that we have to now create a system to make sure that everybody has, so that way we can all cooperate more and not have to compete with each other.
Yeah.
You guys want to close it up?
Also, if you've ever felt like, if I just knew what to do, then I'd be successful. Or if I was just surrounded by the right people while they're building and coming up, if I could just be a part of that group, this is the group you want to be a part of. Because what you're going to be faced with is you're going to have that support, but you're also going to see just how you've been bullshitting yourself, and everything that you think like, oh, if I just have all these things, then my life will magically change. You're going to see whether you're actually willing to do it or not. Right. And
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention the reason why your life is fucked up, or the reason why your life kind of sucks, is because, and the reason why it's because of who you are. It's because you're not good at communicating. It's because you don't know how to have a relationship. It's because you don't know how to talk to people, all that stuff. You don't know how to make good decisions for yourself. And the reason is because your purpose doesn't require that from you. Like Mitchell had suggested, like, guys, you should go door knocking, but you would all fail. Like, you don't have a reason to go door knocking. And like Cameron was saying, is if your purpose, is, when I say your purpose is like what your point of focus is like, I need to have the best time. I need to make sure I'm having a good time with my friends. or I need to make sure that I'm always entertained, or I need to make sure that I can go skydiving or snowboarding or skateboarding or, be an equestrian, like the horse rider, like whatever the case may be. It's like, if you're that doesn't require you to be healthy. That doesn't require you to become a better person. That's why you're not a good person. That's why your communication skills aren't increasing. That's why you can't have a good relationship with your spouse, because you don't actually care. But if your purpose involves being the best version of yourself, because there are people who are looking to you to provide real support, to provide real perspective on what it actually takes to do what's best, then you have to be fucking great. And we kind of operate off of survival. So realize that the forgiveness statement, I forgive myself that I've accepted and allowed, it's like, it's because you're accepting such a fucking low version of life. That's why your life is shit. So you're letting go of all the bullshit that you've accepted of the way you thought life had to be, of everything is just a struggle and you can't change anything and all that bullshit. That when you put that aside and you hold yourself to a high standard, the result of that is going to be, oh, like I realized that, yeah, now I see what they're saying about the education system and the money system, all that stuff. That's what's going to, when your purpose becomes greater, that's what's going to push you to actually become someone that you can be proud of. That's all.
Yeah. And so how do we do it? How do you do it? Self-perfected.com. Join the group. Join the group, look at the principles, and take it on for yourself. And we got a really good challenge this week, and we're going to keep coming out with better ones. So stay involved, befriend everyone in the group, and we're all in this together.
Cool. See you later, everybody.